Here's a rundown of the key points from Quiz 9. So, why are women particularly associated with the cult of Vesta? Why is this cult important to Rome? Vesta is the goddess of the hearth, and so is associated with the cooking fire, the fire that provides life for the family, and by extension, life for the community. This is associated with survival, with perseverance, with being able to continue onward. And so this is symbolized for the community as a whole by an eternal flame that is, again, associated with Vesta on behalf of the community. Um, the nature of this flame is that it needs to be associated with something pure like fire. The Romans consider the maiden to be the ultimate form of purity. And so Vesta is the maiden goddess who is the purest and most unassociated with any other form of complication or anything else of all the Roman gods and goddesses. Vesta doesn't have stories about her. Vesta doesn't have sexuality. Vesta doesn't have a backstory or motivation. She simply is purely and simply, in the ultimate form of simplicity, the goddess of the hearth, the goddess of the fire. And so the Vesta is the most pure, simple, straightforward, enduring of all of the gods. And in human terms, what that corresponds to is as she is the maiden, the untouched, the pure of the gods, so the maiden amongst mortals is associated with her. And so her attendants are virginal priestesses, the Vestal virgins. And this fire comes to symbolize the eternal nature of Rome, and is protected by women because women are capable of this purity and men are not. Men do what they must do. Roman men consider themselves to be obligated to be ruthless, to cover their hands in blood as necessary, to be warriors, to ensure the protection of family and property. And this is why, their iconic figure is Romulus, who represents all of these things, doing what is necessary, being ruthless and and violent as necessary to ensure safety. Purity and virtue is left to the protection of the ultimate form of purity, the Roman maiden. And once the maiden becomes a matron, it becomes her responsibility to forward and foster that virtue and communicate it to the next generation. And so, in a sense, the Vestal Virgins are also not only maidens representing purity, but are also married to Rome in a metaphorical sense, and are acting as repositories, as symbols, as progenitors of virtue to transmit that forward into the eternal future. Why is Isis attractive to women? The key fact here is that Indo-European pagan systems tend to have a sky god who is very masculine, who represents all the things we've been talking about in terms of masculine gods, who is emotional, who is reactive, who is destructive, and so for the Romans, this is Jupiter. For the Greeks, this is Zeus, and so forth. In Egyptian mythology, which is very different, Egyptians are not Indo-Europeans. Egyptian mythology has its sky god is Isis, a woman, and Isis, embodies the characteristics of female deities. Somebody who is strong and wise and proactive, and who is also nurturing and creative of the future. And Isis is involved in creating the future in terms of the mythology of the pharaoh, and of the cyclical nature of the gods. In other words, there's a mythology of Osiris and Horus that involves death and rebirth that is presided over by Isis, and this is invoked every time a pharaoh dies and is replaced by another pharaoh. And the continuity, the unchanging nature of Egypt is preserved through cycle, and this is conducted by, overseen by, ensured by Isis. Isis is the provider of surety and constancy. So, in addition to all of our other qualities of strength and wisdom, and and the creation of the future, and as a sky god, Isis is immensely appealing to people outside the Egyptian system who see in her another kind of god that they're not used to and are drawn to her immensely. And this is one of the reasons that the Romans graft the cult of Isis onto the Roman religious system, so that those who are drawn to Isis and those who are part of that cult don't become alternatives to the Roman identity, don't become apart from and hostile to the Roman identity, but are part of the assimilation into Romanness. Essentially, this is another form of Roman adaptation. The Romans survive religiously, and one of the ways that they do that is, in terms of their culture, they graft on things that are missing from their culture, and one of those is this particular kind of God. All the following are true of the Vestal Virgins, except for the one about the paterfamilias. The paterfamilias for the Vestal Virgins is the Pontifex Maximus. In other words, the Vestal Virgins become essentially children of Rome itself. That's the point there, and so they are no longer part of their individual private family. They are a part of the Roman family itself, and so their father is the religious father of the Roman community. In the selected letter for Pliny, there are a number of things that Pliny talks about in terms of different kinds of women that he finds admirable, and so a lot of these have to do with different aspects of what he finds to be virtuous, and this is part of the text of how Romans talk about women, how they see women as representing a particular need for the Romans to maintain the particular aspects of virtue, so that it can be ensured for the Roman community as a whole. And that's the end of the quiz. Email me with any questions.